Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, April 18th. And today we're going to chat with our good friend Joey Norris from Georgia. We've had Joey on the show many times. Often we talk baseball when he's on the show. But today we're going to talk about the politics, sort of the center of the political world today is a special election in Georgia. And this is a special election because the gentleman who used to represent that district, Dr. Price, is now Secretary Price, and he is, of course, in the Trump cabinet, Secretary of Health and Human Services. So they're filling that seat today. And what's interesting about this election is the rules. In most states, you have a Democrat running against a Republican after they've had their own primaries. In this case, you have like 19 people running in one election, and somebody has to get 50%, I guess 50 plus one or a majority. And if you don't get that, then it goes to a runoff. And that's going to be what everybody's going to be watching tonight as they begin to count the results. So we'll be talking to Joey in a second, and we'll get his perspective. He doesn't live far from the district. He's there in Georgia, and I'm sure he's familiar with the ads and all the conversation that is going there. Just a couple of quick things on this day in history. If you're a fan of World War II history, there was a gentleman by the name of Ernie Pyle. He was a newspaper man who became very popular during World War II. And his popularity is that the byline that he would send back to the United States was a sort of a soldier-oriented byline. He didn't just cover the war in the traditional military correspondent way, saying so many battles here and so many battles there, so many casualties. He would do the war very much from the perspective of the soldiers, and this is why his byline was so popular back home during the war, because very often the fathers, the mothers, the wives, the girlfriends, and so on would get to read stories and would often be reminded of where their sons or boyfriends or husbands may have been. And the reason we bring up Ernie Pyle is because he was killed on this day in 1945. He was killed in one of the Pacific Islands. I don't remember which one right now. And he was killed, and he's also buried along with a lot of soldiers in one of those islands, in one of the veteran cemeteries. So Ernie Pyle, really interesting story. There's a great movie about him that I would definitely recommend. He's a really interesting character, and I wrote a post about him a couple of years ago that was published in the American Thinker, and I put it up at Facebook today, if anybody can see it in my Facebook page, and I also put it up on Twitter. It's a story of his life and what a fascinating person he was. The other point that I wanted to make before we get to Joey is that I have a post over at the American Thinker today about North Korea, where I simply argue that the situation with North Korea is unsustainable. We tolerated North Korea for a long time, and I think we did it on purpose because we didn't want to have to go to war with them. We were hoping that somehow the country would collapse from within and all of that. But now we've reached the point where unless the Chinese are willing to do something about it, and I hope they are, this may very well require some kind of military action. I mean, you simply cannot have a guy firing missiles into the ocean and threatening to hit your cities with missiles. At some point, one of these missiles is going to hit something, and then you're going to back into a war. So keep an eye on North Korea. I think this is the most dangerous foreign policy challenge of President Trump here in year number one. Let's say hello to our good friend, our number one Atlanta Braves fan, as all of our sports listeners know, my good friend Joey Norris. How are you, Joey?
I'm good, Silvio. How are you, sir?
Absolutely great. Well, you got to give me a quick report about that new stadium, because you went to the Braves. You went to their first game in that new stadium, and pictures I saw were pretty exciting.
Yes, sir. That was a very exciting moment for me and my wife. We had a great time going to SunTrust Park. The stadium is just absolutely gorgeous. The surrounding area of the stadium, nothing but restaurants, shopping areas. They have really built around. I'm amazed that they finished everything in 3 years, because usually it takes 5 years for a stadium to be built, but they did it, and they still finishing up the hotel that the Braves half own with the Omni Hotel organization, but pretty much everything is completed, and it's just absolutely gorgeous.
Well, it certainly looks that way in the pictures. that's going to be the third, right? The third stadium that the Braves have played in. There was Fulton County Stadium, as I recall. Then there was the other stadium, which is where they won the World Series, and then this new one. So that's three. That's a lot of stadia in such a short time. That's pretty impressive, Joey.
Yes, sir. Atlanta Fulton County Stadium and Turner Field. The reason why the Braves moved from Turner Field was the city owned Turner Field because of the Olympics, and the city refused to do renovations to the stadium. So the Braves organization decided that they was going to go ahead and build their own stadium, and that was the main reason why the Braves moved out of the city of Atlanta and moved to Cobb County.
Well, it's a new stadium to enjoy baseball. That's always a lot of fun, and hopefully this young Braves team can keep the people coming in because they've got some good prospects, don't they?
Oh, absolutely, man. This is they got off to a slow start, and they swept the San Diego Padres this weekend. So they are 6-6, so they're 500. That's a better start than last year when they started 0-9. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So hopefully we can get a wild card. I'm not betting on the division this year, but hopefully we can get a wild card and get into the playoffs.
Well, you know that I'll invite you later on during the season to talk a little baseball. So
absolutely,
you are our show's Atlanta Braves correspondent. So we'll have you. We'll have you on later on. Well, let's talk about the big story in Georgia. I mentioned Georgia is the center of the political world today because of this election. The election is to replace Dr. Price, of course. And explain for the audience who may be not familiar with how you do elections in Georgia. Explain a little bit about why so many people are running today and how and what happens at the end of the day. Explain that a little bit, Joey.
Sure. Georgia has a unique system when it comes to the elections. When parties run in their primaries and when the general election happens, or even a special runoff election like is going on today, you have to receive 50% plus one. It doesn't matter who's first, who's second, third, fourth. It doesn't matter how many candidates are running. You have to receive 50% plus one. If you do not receive 50% plus one, you have to, the top two candidates, whether they got 29% to 35% or 40% to 35%, they go to a runoff election 30 days from today. So whoever finished the top two tonight in District 6 will move on to June, I believe June 6th or June 20th, runoff election to decide who's going to replace Congressman Tom Price, who is now Secretary Price. That's right.
Now, the district, as I was reading, this is a district with a conservative tradition. Newt Gingrich represented this district. Where exactly is the district? I mean, where is it, let's say, vis-a-vis Atlanta? Where is it?
It actually covers Marietta County and parts of Gwinnett County. So it covers pretty much where the new Braves Stadium at, all the way west of Atlanta, or the city of Atlanta. It doesn't cover the city of Atlanta. It covers north and west of Atlanta.
Right. And what are, we've been hearing a great deal. Obviously, the national media is really very invested in this election, just like they were invested a week ago in a special election in Kansas. But that was more traditional. That was simply a case of a Democrat running against a Republican, and that what turned out to be 53-46, something like that, in favor of the Republican. In this particular case, because there's 19 people running, the national media has really been focusing a great deal on this young Democrat who's running, whose last name escapes me right now, but it starts with the letter O. Is it Ossoff? Is that how you pronounce it?
It's Ossoff.
The gentleman's okay, and he's been very much in the middle of all the attention. He's a young Democrat. He's 30 years old, and I don't know much about his background, but he seems to have attracted a lot of money from out of state, and he seems to be running a lot of ads and so on. And how does it look, Joey? If I know you're not a a betting man, and neither am I. But what's your gut telling you about what's going to happen tonight?
My gut's telling me it's going to be a runoff in June. It may be Ossoff versus the Republican. The way I'm looking at the Georgia polls, I'm looking at how Atlanta Journal-Constitution polls looking. It's going to be a runoff between the top Republican, whoever finished second. It's going to be a Republican, and Ossoff is polling at 40%, but we'll see. He may finish first, but most of the time, the person who finished first in the runoff usually loses in the runoff if they don't receive 50% plus one. So I'm not a betting man. I'm thinking this seat will remain Republican. It has always been a Republican since 1979. The Democrats have gerrymandered this district a little bit since Newt Gingrich, but Congressman Price has always won this district as well. So I'm thinking that it's going to be a runoff in June, and the Republican will keep the seat.
Right. Now, the reason that so much attention has been paid to this district by the national media, that is because you're correct. This has been a district that for almost 40 years, a Republican has won fairly easily. Dr. Price, I believe, got 61% of the vote when he ran the last time, which is an easy victory. But Mr. Trump only got 48%, 48 versus 47 over Mrs. Clinton. So it was a pretty close election that day. Now, I don't know what that says. There may have been some Georgia Republicans who were angry with Mr. Trump over this and that. I don't know. And, at this point, I guess it doesn't matter because Mr. Trump won. But what can you tell me about the turnout? What kind of turnout are they expecting today, Joey? Are they expecting a heavy turnout? And before you answer that question, let me just tell you a couple of things that I've learned. I learned that the Democrat early vote had been very good. But by the end of last week, the Republican early vote had pretty much caught up and pretty much passed it, so that they, on Election Day, more Democrats, or just about the same Democrats and Republicans, had early voted, which is a bad sign for the Democrats because there's more Republicans than Democrats in the district. So that's what I've heard from Texas. Can you confirm or expand on any of that?
Yeah, I think I can confirm what you're saying is true. Democrats have gone out early voted in this district, but a lot of Republicans vote on Election Day. So in Georgia, I can only speak for Georgia. I know I don't vote in early voting. I try not to. I'm a traditionalist, so I try to vote on Election Day. So I believe your assessment is absolutely correct. I think the votes will catch up. The Republicans will catch up to the Democrats and even it out. Now, I have no way of knowing exactly how the turnout would be. I don't think it's going to be as high, and I don't think it's going to be as low. I think it's going to be in the middle.
Yeah. Or a typical turnout for a special election, which is usually lower than a general election. Now, as we also understand that the Democrat or the Democrat that we're talking about, that he's been receiving a lot of money from outside the district, that this is almost like a candidate seems to be more popular outside of the district than inside the district. So is that true?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he has Samuel L. Jackson doing radio ads, but what makes this so unbelievable, Silvio, Samuel L. Jackson never mentions the candidate's name. He says, vote Democrat. He never mentions the candidate's name. He just says, vote Democrat. Go out and vote Democrat. So the special interest outside of Georgia is heavily invested because the media already have the narrative ready to go tomorrow if the Democrats win. Well, this is it. The Trump presidency is over. It's done with. The American people have decided that his presidency was a mistake. That is the narrative they're waiting to preach tomorrow. So, I mean, it's so much influence. Hollywood is dumping tons of money in Georgia. I wish he was in Georgia. You can really see what's going on. But Hollywood especially is dumping a lot of money in Georgia.
Right. That's what we hear, and I've heard some of the ads on on some of the shows. You're right. I mean, Hollywood is really invested. Now, I did an article about this young man who's running, and I went to his website and I looked at his website, and he's not really running on a lot of very heavy issues. I mean, for example, he believes in affordable health care. Well, so do you and I. He believes in jobs. Well, you and I believe in that too. So it seems to me that he's not, he's not really pinning down. He's not really being very specific, which it's a double-edged sword. It could get him elected today, but if it puts him against a Republican in June, I think they're going to eat him alive because
I believe
they're going to paint him as a liberal, which is what I think he is anyway. But so he has to win today. The Democrat has to get 51% today, or I believe you're right. I think the Republican will win in June.
Oh, absolutely. He has to win today. If he doesn't win today, it's going to be tough for him to win 30 days from now because the Democrats really, tell you the truth, Silvio, the Democrats don't really care about this guy. They just want to win this seat. And if he's elected tonight, all he's going to do is follow the leadership, what they want him to do. So, I mean, they really liberals and the progressive movement who are dumping money in Georgia. They don't really care about that candidate. They just want the seat. They just want that seat because they want that narrative to go out that Trump presidency is a failure.
Right. I think that's what it is. I think it's all about President Trump. And my sense, though, Joey, is they're going to be disappointed because I don't think he's going to crack 50%. I think he'll do well, but it'll be in the 40s. And then what I'm assuming most of the Republicans will then coalesce around whoever the Republican is, and the elections will be, in the 55-45 range when they meet in June. Now, there's one more thing that I wanted to clarify that maybe you can help us understand. There is a news report that this gentleman doesn't even live in the district he's running, and I find that shocking because I always thought that you had to live in the district in order to run for Congress. I don't know, unless there are special rules in Georgia. I always thought that's the way it was, which means that if he were to win today, there would be a serious legal challenge to his victory, Joey.
Oh, absolutely, because I've done a little research myself, Silvio. He grew up, he was born in that district, but he never lived in the district. He moved away from the district. He now lives with his girlfriend of 12 years now. He's been dating this girl for 12 years, and she's now in medical school, and he's waiting on her, as he said it today on Fox News or on CNN, that he's waiting on her to graduate. Then he'll move back to the district. That's exactly what he said. I almost hit the floor when I heard it.
I think most women would hear that and say, that girl has a lot of patience.
Exactly.
12 years, my gosh.
12 years.
I think that
they've been dating 12 years.
I think a lot of girls would say, man, put up or shut up. I don't want to wait another 12 years. But anyway, that has nothing to do with the election. That's just a comment based on the women I've known over the years who are pretty conservative when it comes to all of those things, Joey.
Absolutely, because Georgia does have a law. You have to live in the district. You have to have an address in the district. So I don't know how he's getting away with it, but in Georgia, I know the Georgia law because I ran a campaign 3 years ago. You have to live in the district.
Well, I think it's that way in most places. I mean, that just seems sensible to me. I remember I was telling you off the air that when I ran for local office here in Texas, that I had to sign a bunch of papers. A lot of it is for contributions and all that kind of stuff, the paper and the money and all of that. But I'm sure that among the many forms that I signed, one of them said that I was confirming that I lived in this school district. So I was really surprised to hear that this morning. I was kind of surprised that had not been an issue before, but I guarantee you it's going to be an issue in June when he runs against whoever the Republican is. This is going to be a big time issue. And I wouldn't even be surprised I wouldn't even be surprised if and I was thinking about this. We were talking a bit off the air, but before the show, but you gave me an idea. Imagine that he comes in. Okay, let's just say he comes in first, and then I'd say you and I, just in the hypothetical example, we come in 2 and 3. Let's say you're 2 and I'm 3. I'm 3. I'm going to challenge him and say, hey, he's not eligible. It's you and me who run for the election. Number 3 and number 2 are going to be challenging number 1 in this election. So I mean, we may see some legal challenges. Well, Joey, as always, I want to thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us today on short notice. But I really wanted to get your perspective on this particular race. I guess we should know fairly soon. 7 o'clock your time is 6 our time. Probably by 8 o'clock or so, we'll have a pretty good idea of whether or not there's going to be a runoff, I would think, because it's not a big territory to count the votes, and it's an urban area, so they probably won't have to wait too late for the votes. Would that be right, Joey?
Yes, sir. We should know by 8:15ish, 8:30 at the latest.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on the results, but I'm predicting there's going to be a runoff. I think that's the way it's going to come out. I just don't see how he gets the 50% because in all the polls that I've seen, he's in the 40s. So, you know, I think that's probably where he'll be. Have a wonderful day. And I guess the last time I spoke, you were not married. So congratulations on your marriage, and my best to you and your lovely bride in your early years of marriage. You're really a great friend, and I want to thank you for being with us on the show today.
Well, thank you, Silvio. I appreciate it. You've been a great friend for the last 5 years. I've really enjoyed coming on the show, talking politics, talking baseball especially, and baseball history. So I'm looking forward to coming back on your show eventually.
Oh, you will. Believe me.
Okay. Man, I'm looking forward
you will,
to it. Thank you, Silvio.
You're always on my list, you know, when I do a baseball show, especially when we talk about the National League and so on. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful day, Joey.
All right, you too, Silvio.
Thank you so much. Joey Norris from Georgia, our good friend, talking about that special election today. We're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back.
This is Carlos Quedes Harpist, and I would like to see you guys this Saturday night at Nola Brasserie Authentic Cajun and Creole Restaurant, located at 1201 Main Street, downtown Dallas. I'll be performing instrumental high-energy jazz at 7:30 until midnight. So make your reservation today at 469-872-1820.
Well, that's our good friend Carlos, who's been playing on Saturday nights over at NOLA. I hope you have a chance to see him. It's an absolutely wonderful show and good music and good food. Believe me, when you go there, you're going to hear some great music and eat some absolutely wonderful food at NOLA. Well, my thanks to Joey Norris joining us from Georgia. As you know, there's a big special election today, and I think that by all accounts, I mean, you never know with these local elections because the polling data is often unreliable, and so you can make a prediction, but you always have to realize that things could change. But I'm going to make a prediction. I think there is going to be a runoff, and the runoff is going to be between the Democrat and whoever the Republican who comes in second, because there's like 17 Republicans who are running. That's what complicates things. And then we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I was talking before about a legal challenge. We've learned today that the Democrat who is leading the race is not even a resident of that district. I don't know how you can run in a district that you don't live in. I always thought that was rule number one. That was like 101 of any campaign, that you had to live in the district or obviously live in the state or wherever it is that you're running. And so that could become an issue, for example, as I was talking to Joey, that could really become an issue. Let's say he comes in number one, the Democrat comes in number one, and a couple of Republicans come in 2 and 3. I wouldn't be surprised if number 3 challenges the result and say he cannot win or he cannot participate in the runoff because he doesn't live in the district, and you never know. They may cancel his votes. But I'm kind of surprised that nobody in the Democratic Party picked up on this. This is, at least as I understand, it's a pretty big deal if you don't live in the district. I mean, this is something that I'm amazed. I am amazed that we just found out about this today. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thank you for listening. Again, I think there's going to be a runoff in Georgia tonight. Have a wonderful day, everybody. It's an absolutely lovely day of spring here in Texas. So what else can I say? It's just absolutely lovely. Bye-bye, everybody.